All right, so those presents, Gerard Ahern,
Present.
Andy Kishitz,
Here.
Brad Reed,
Here.
Elizabeth Hutchins,
Here.
and Gabriella Mano.
Here.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So this is a continuation from the 3/15/2022 hearing. And again, for those present, it's the Mallow Lane application, the adult living community proposed off of South Bolton Road. It was revised last hearing to 8 detached single-family homes, 6 designated as age restricted and 2 designated as affordable. So since the last hearing, we've had sort of 4 primary documents submitted. On 3/31, we had Horsey Witten Group's peer review letter addressing stormwater and wetlands aspect of the applicant's plans and related documents. A letter dated 3/23 from Bethany Bethune and Chris Hoyt, their letters at 342 South Main. They documented a host of observations and proposed conditions. Some of them are similar to those noted by Horsey Witten Group. And we can get into they presented, or I can speak to it. And then on 4/1, we had from the applicant revised submittal of documents, including a Dillison Roy 330 peer review response letter, an updated waiver request letter, revised site plan documents, I believe some of them, a drainage report, and turning movement plan. So, and then we had yesterday received a letter from Joe Pesnola, who's our peer review consultant from Hancock Associates. And Joe outlined some of the current status and observations and timeline that he can speak to later. So with those sort of key 4 items, we'll kick off presentations. It may make sense to have Horsey Witten go first because they're responding to the peer review, and then have the then have the applicant go second because they may have updates that they can incorporate into their presentation. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay, and then we can have toward the end have Joe, either chime in during those 2, or if we want to separate afterwards, have Joe speak to his observations from his letter, and then we'll go from there. But on anyone presenting tonight, we're bumping up against the next targeted statutory deadline to close the hearing, which is May 5th, I believe. There are some open items that were documented in a host of the presentation documents that we received. So to the extent some of those items aren't going to be coming in timely, we may have to look at requesting from the applicant another month extension so that we can get documentation in, get our boards to review them, get any peer review final comments, and then we can work toward getting to a close of the hearing and then the decision process. So with that, anyone speaking tonight, if you you have an open document that you have a timeline of when to submit it, please note that. And if you're speaking on any of the consultants, if there's a document you believe we need that has been provided, please highlight that so we can keep a running list. So why don't Horsey Witten Group come? Hi, Janet, are you going to speak?
Hi. Maybe Amy is. I think Amy and I both have some pieces to discuss.
Right.
Amy Ball conducted the wetlands review. So I think, Amy, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I'm referring specifically to our March 21st letter, which we did a combined stormwater and wetlands review letter review. And so this is, we're sorting in reverse order because this is sort of a, things that we can maybe check off. The wetlands review starts on page 14. And the review is short and sweet because with the exception of responding to a couple of comments from our letter back in, I want to say October, the applicant has not appreciably answered any of the wetland questions that may pertain to the ZBA review. And then for this most recent review, we sort of revisit the discussion of the vernal pool status of the largest of the wetlands, and they call that wetland A. And this is the one that's off-site. And there had been some question about whether or not this wetland area is provides vernal pool habitat. We understand that there had been a local school group that had collected some data in our discussions with the conservation agent. They may or may not have completed the certification process with the Mass Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program. But if there is any question, we merely point out that this is now the time of year to make that determination. It's vernal pool is spring, and that season has already started. So we added a seventh comment to our original letters, just recommending that they confirm the status of Wetland Day as being a vernal pool. Mm-hmm. This is relevant in the applicant's request for relief from several of the provisions under the local bylaw, because recall this is wetland area A is the larger wetland area. There's a smaller wetland area B to the sort of north of there. They are requesting a waiver for work within these resource areas and specifically within the buffer zone. For grading within 30 feet, pavement within 56 feet, retaining wall within 44 feet, a drainage outlet within 62 feet, wells for unit 1 and 6 at 73 feet and 100 feet respectively. All of those requests are within the 100-foot buffer zone to wetland A, which would also be within the 100-foot vernal pool habitat, vernal pool area under the local bylaw. And particularly with respect to wells, there's a strong possibility that that could result in some changes to the hydrology within a wetland. And within a vernal pool where you have a seasonal ponding area, that's a consideration for ZBA. Okay. As well as conservation. So we have recommended with respect to those requests that our comment number 8 is that the applicant quantify the amount of lost forested vernal pool habitat that will occur as a result of the proposed site grading and installation of the proposed road as currently designed, and assess how the loss of this forested habitat would affect the vernal pool habitat. Being that the vernal pool species breed in these ponded, pooled areas in the spring, but the remainder of the year, these species live in the wooded uplands or the buffer zone. The next comment was that we recommend that the town seek to have the applicant qualify and quantify how the proposed wells for units 1 and 6 will affect the water levels in the potential vernal pool within wetland A. Our next comment is that we recommend the town seek to have the applicant quantify and qualify how the proposed stormwater outfall that is also proposed within the buffer zone to wetland A, how that will affect the water levels and the water quality in the potential vernal pool. And then finally, we recommend that the applicant quantify how much of the vernal pool habitat will be lost as a result of the site grading and installation of the proposed road. Okay, and then the rest of our comments pertain to our stormwater review.
But there was, I believe,
yes,
so
sir.
there is one document that was referenced from their consultant. There's a report due, is that correct? Regarding wetlands?
Oh, what from our original comments? Yes, we would like to have an assessment of the wetlands and specifically this vernal pool habitat.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thanks.
That was in our October 14th letter, I think.
And that's still outstanding. Yeah.
Yeah, several of those questions are still outstanding.
Perfect. Okay.
Janet Stormwater?
Janet, you want to come on?
Yes, for the record, my name is Janet Bernardo. I'm a professional engineer with the Horsley Witten Group. We have provided, as Amy noted, our fourth peer review letter dated March 21st. And the applicant has submitted some new information in response to that we just received March 30th. It's dated March 30th. We received it Friday or Monday. So we haven't gone through point by point what the applicant has provided. Maybe tonight they can add some of that information to us. Some of our comments were really referencing the stormwater design has been changed. Now they're proposing a subsurface infiltration chamber system beneath the cul-de-sac portion of the site. As you are, I believe, are aware, they've reduced their units from 11 units to 8 units. So there was a little bit more space to work around. There's a large subsurface infiltration system beneath the cul-de-sac, and then a surface infiltration basin closer to the road. And there's a new subsurface infiltration system. If you're looking up from the roadway on the right side, just a small system. So there's no soil testing done for that small system. That's just capturing the catch basins that are at the bottom of the new roadway. So there would need some soil testing to confirm that the soils are reasonable for infiltration and the depth to groundwater in that location. As we've asked for additional details for the infiltration, the surface infiltration basin that they're now proposing, we had made some recommendations previously about the amount of fill that was kind of happening in that, right in that knoll at the beginning of the site, trying to make it a more reasonable elevation change because they were going to excavate out a whole area. So I think the surface basin is a preferred design over the subsurface basin that they had previously had with the amount of fill that they were putting over it. They just needed to provide some additional information regarding that. One thing to be aware of is that the subsurface basin that's to the right side of the driveway is just a small basin. It has 2 catch basins going to it. It doesn't have an overflow system, so usually there's some type of a pipe that's discharging to like a riprap apron or something off of that. But that basin, the overflow will be the grates of the catch basins themselves. So if for the really heavy storm events, the actual chambers fill up, the water would go back and start coming out at the catch basins. That's for the heavier storm events. So, when you get your 2,500 year storm events, everything is wet, but so it's not surprising that water might come bubbling up out of the catch basins, but sometimes it is. And so it's something to be aware of. It's not going, if it's a really heavy storm and those chambers fill up, they will be coming up from the catch basins themselves and not discharging off down a slope, because the only slope that they would discharge to would be the abutter. So it's just as well that they're not going to the abutter also.
So that would head toward the road.
Then it would, it would overtop towards the road, so now in the road, there is a beehive grate just like basically in front of the property. We'd probably end up going into that, which then goes underneath the road to the wetland that's across the street. So that's kind of how it would function.
Right. Okay. So it wouldn't topple into the road, so it'd become like a safety issue, water finding on the road, people come around and slipping.
Right. It's going to be important to make sure that the grading gets done properly so that you keep the gutter line happening in the street, so that if those 2 catch basins at the end of this roadway over top, they stay in the gutter line and go into that other existing beehive grate. and don't just cross the road.
Yeah,
You-
they won't.
Yeah,
Can I
that's not,
speak, Jan, excuse me, can I speak on that for a minute?
Oh, sure.
I think I want to add some clarification.
Mhm.
So so there'll be two catch basins at the entrance of Mallard Lane. The down gradient one, which was in a high storm event, will discharge to the lower topography, which has riprap before the beehive. And the beehive happens to be on our property. And the town did some work there to fix some of the flooding previously. So the overflow will work great that way, because if you look at if you were to enter Mallard Lane on the left side, that's the down gradient basin. So that's where the water would overflow to. And that attaches to the beehive with a bunch of riprap in front of the beehive. And then that would go across
Is
the
it
street.
possible to just pull up the plan so that we can kind of see exactly what they're speaking to and where they're referencing?
Mr. Chairman, if it's easy, I can share my screen.
That's fine as long as Valerie has no concern.
This should be fine.
Okay, thanks, Valerie.
All right, hopefully you can all see my screen now.
yes. Yeah, so you can see there's the infiltration system that's at the edge of the driveway. So there's two catch
Right.
basins there that will basically, the goal is to capture the runoff before it goes into South Bolton Road. And so this subsurface system will do that. We just want to confirm that they have done some soil testing before that is totally installed to make sure that it's above groundwater. There is the wetland across the street, so that is kind of lower. I'm suspecting that groundwater won't be a problem right there, but they still need to do that confirmation.
Yes, can I speak on that, Janet? So
Mhm.
this Friday, we have the soil testing scheduled with Neshoba, who is Bill Brookings. We're going to be testing for the new system location and all the detention bonds on Friday at 11 with Bill. So Bill will be able to witness all the soil testing. And actually Seth will meet me out there also from Dillis and Roy.
That's great. So what you will be able to will you be able to provide that information to Horsley Witten? like,
Yep, Friday afternoon, I'll send it over.
That will be perfect. That way we can incorporate that into our review and we'll be able to say, okay, they did this and there's separation and
Right. Yeah, if you look at the soil logs of USGS, all that area is classified as a gravel pit, formal gravel pit.
right. So I'm expecting the soil type won't be a problem. It's just a matter of confirm that groundwater is not a problem.
Okay.
There was some additional information details that we were looking for. The operation and maintenance plan to make sure that this is clearly everybody understands how to take care of this. Is this all part of the homeowners association that will be maintaining everything?
That is correct.
Yeah, so we want to, and was there an O&M plan included with the latest submission?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so we just haven't had a chance to go through that to make sure that all of the points are taken care of. And the tree line to make sure that there's tree protection for any trees that are being protected that are adjacent to the limit of work. Make sure that is taken care of. The wastewater, we didn't have any additional information. Has that been provided at this stage to the Board of Health for the sizing of the septic system for the reduced units?
Yes, it was on a plan that Greg Roy submitted to the ZBA and his last revisions. He's calculated, once we drop the amount of units, Greg talked about that at the last meeting. There's calculations supplied on the set of plans.
Okay, so we didn't have that information March 31st, March
I think he had it
21st.
prior. Once we dropped it to 8 units, Greg Roy did the calculations and put it right on the set of plans, the permit set of plans.
Maybe we didn't Okay, all right.
Jim,
great.
I can dive into
Okay.
these comments collectively. We can let Amy finish her comments and I can kind of cohesively
Okay.
bring them together if that's all right.
Yep. I
Yeah,
just don't want
'cause
any
we-
confusion as we move forward. I don't mean to interrupt Janet. I respect you, Janet. I just don't want it to go down a road and then everybody gets concerned that there's something happening that shouldn't be happening there. So if it's okay with the chairman, I would like to address any serious concerns that I don't want to wait on some of these things that I think are really important topics that
Oh,
we
no,
can
no.
easily discuss.
Right. So I
Yeah.
don't want to interrupt Janet's cadence too much, but to the extent that, she finishes, then yes, if there's things you want to address right away, either yourself or Seth, then we can, sort of button those down.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I believe that a number of the comments that we had would have been relatively easily addressed as looking for more details and some additional calculations in the O&M plan. So there was just a number of items to be presented to us, as well as the soil logs. So if that was something that is being provided, has been provided with this latest March 30th documents, then I just wanted to confirm that the applicant didn't find any of our comments like either confusing or unreasonable, or didn't agree with them in some way, that we should talk about that.
No, I have no concerns about your comments,
So
Horsley
So-
Witten's comments.
and they were able to be addressed. So I mean, looking at the response letter, I'm seeing that they're acknowledged and that the information has been provided, and we just haven't gone through and checked off that each piece makes sense. It'll be really great to have the soil testing incorporated into our next review letter. So, and I think that that is something that if we get that soil test, we'll be able to look through everything and have a letter.
Yeah, the nice thing about the soil testing, it'll be witnessed by Bill himself too, so.
Great.
Do you know
So-
if the O&M that was submitted is more recent than, I don't remember when you submitted the revised site plans. What was the date on that?
I have March 30th.
Well, 228, I think before our last hearing, they had some revised plans, but they may have had some additional revisions in this most recent filing. Not everything was revised, but there may have been certain schedules within
Okay.
that did get revised.
I'm just looking, it looks like from our packet that we get the drainage report that's on here, which has the O&M as a attachment, looks like it might not necessarily have been up to date or may have like typographical errors based on how the new design. So I would just double check, take a look at that and make sure that it is actually accurate and representative of the new plan and references the right stuff. Just as an aside.
Yeah, the letter that I have that was dated March 30th says that a new O&M plan was provided. So I assume it's a March 30th O&M plan.
Yeah, the one we have is dated February 28th.
Mhm.
I just don't know.
But
That's
there's
the
an
date in the
update
header
to that
anyway.
on March 30th.
Hmm.
One I just pulled from the town website.
Mhm.
It was from 2/28, but then there was an update on 3/30.
Right.
Where are you pulling that from? Well, I
Page
I
one.
clicked on, we can talk about it offline. I clicked on the drainage report under the April 1st stuff from the packet page, but what I'm seeing as the related attachment still says February 28th. So
Okay.
I just want to make sure it's up to date, that's all.
If there's any
So our
questions,
plan, our plan is to review this information and get you a letter. I mean, it's nice if the wetlands information was incorporated in the same letter. Do we have any idea when we're gonna get that? Did you just say that? and there was-
I can speak to the wetlands. I didn't. So when I tried to have Norse join us tonight, but they couldn't. They've been extremely busy like everybody, but what we talked about as far as the vernal pools were the vernal pool was classified with having fairy tale shrimp in there, which I guess do not migrate. And also regarding, there was some missing flags supposedly. Maureen did say that it was a straight line in the plan that was submitted to conservation. She gave me the date. It was so long ago, I don't remember the exact date. But if you look at the plan that the conservation had commented on, those flags were never on the plan. There was supposedly, somebody brought up, I think Amy might have brought up that flags 1 and 2 were missing, but they were never submitted. So, and it is a straight line. That's what Maureen was saying. So Maureen wanted to default to the original plan that was submitted to conservation. The plan's referenced in their communications with everybody here tonight. And that's the plan they looked at.
Is Maureen, is she with Norse?
Yes, yeah, Maureen Harold. So, so that, you know, with the wetlands, and then what we talked about, just to remind everybody, is that Greg was mentioning that if we do anything kind of with the conservation, that the decision lies here with the ZBA. So what Greg wanted to do is probably do some type of filing after that. I don't know if people remember that conversation. He said that. So regarding the wetlands, you know, that's kind of where it's at, is, you know, we were pretty confident on the larger vernal pool area that is vernal pool, that we were told by Westboro that the group from Minuteman Tech came out and they addressed it and they classified it as fairy-tailed shrimp. So we moved on from that. And then Greg made his comments about, you know, we need some decisions before we can talk to conservation in a reasonable manner. We know we have to file an NOI with them for the entrance of the road of Mallard Lane because of the wetland that's across the street. So that's, in my mind, that's where the wetlands were sitting. I know that, you know, some things keep coming up, but in my mind, once Greg talked about the wetlands and what we were going to do with conservation in the future, that's where I left it.
So you don't anticipate or will there be at least a document from North saying this is the status, so that we have whatever to incorporate into our versus the different...
Well, we have a letter already. I don't know if it's in the packet or not, talking about, I think it was an email from the endangered species in Westboro. I forget the name of the firm, the state agency from Westboro, but they already classified it that you know, it is a vernal pool and there's fairy tale shrimp in there. That's the species that are in there. And so that letter's been kicking around for, I don't know, 8 months, a year, maybe.
So Janet or Amy, I mean, because you're the technical experts in this, in your letter, you said, you know, the applicant at one point, you know, confirmed that Norse would be responding. What do you need for your review so that we can have it all encompassing and we don't have an open item on when it comes to either closing the hearing, because then we can go back and get it. It either has to happen when Concom's doing their thing, but if there's some important piece that we need for our decision-making process, what do you recommend?
Well, certainly I would like to see some responses to our most recent letter in March regarding the potential effects of the well locations in proximity to the vernal pool. And also, although Janet, you said the stormwater system has changed, I don't know whether that's also affected that particular outfall.
It is still discharging to the vernal pool.
Okay. Fairy shrimp, as they pointed out, do not migrate. They are egg to egg in a vernal pool, which may alleviate some of the concerns about the buffer zone impacts or the vernal, you know, the upland vernal pool areas and the loss of that habitat, because the fairy shrimp don't migrate. They don't leave the pool. I think it would be clean if the applicant's wetlands consultant could respond to all of our comments in, you know, perhaps a single letter to make sure that all of that information is available for the record for ZBA. And that would include the comments that go back to October.
Okay.
Yeah, I will make sure that Norse gets that deliverable.
Okay,
I'll
thanks.
take that personally and then we'll put in the package in the response letter to have it all clean and neat. Is I will look for the email from Westboro that talks about what species is in there and how the students came out from Minuteman Tech and did their study. So.
All right.
Just one thing, as the zoning board, I think is very aware, because it is a comprehensive permit, the applicant does not necessarily have to follow the town local wetland bylaws, but they do need to follow the state bylaws. So they will be filing a notice of intent under the state permit, notice of intent under the state guidelines, but not necessarily under the local. So that's kind of why we want to make sure if there's anything different from the local regulations point of view, that we can present that to the zoning board for your understanding as a comprehensive decision-making process. Because the Conservation Commission probably won't have that opportunity. They'll be under the state regulation only. That makes sense.
Thanks for that clarification.
And so the vernal pool is one of the bigger comments there. Because at the state level, the vernal pool habitat would only be protected up to the limit of the wetland area, the boundary of the wetland. It would not extend into what we would call the buffer zone of the wetland area.
Okay. All right, well, good. So at least we'll get a document from the applicant or his consultant and we'll button that up. That's good. I think Seth was going to speak about some of the comments that to Janet's, and Amy's questions. But while you're doing that, Seth, we may get a question from Andy Kitchets, who's on the board. He had some questions about some of the waivers that were provided in the most recent document, and so he may. I don't know what the best point is for him to ask those questions, but certainly he'll chime in on those when he has a second.
And can I just make, before Seth starts, I
Sure.
tend to focus on the stormwater piece, but I want to make sure that the conversation about the location of the individual wells and the setback and whether a waiver will be granted, that's maybe more of a Board of Health point of view because of the setbacks that are required and the site distance. I think the police have said that the unposted sign is 40 miles per hour, so I'm not sure where that landed.
Can I speak to that a little bit too? So I think what's not being discussed properly is the speed of the road. So when you look up state mass general laws, it talks about within 1,320 feet, if you have so many houses within 1,320 feet and it's not posted, it's a 30-mile-an-hour zone. I think somebody who was ever asking the police chief is talking about a different section of South Bolton Road where it goes under 495 because it's a lot wider. So I think the speed, when you ask for the speed by the police department, I think if we're going to get guidance for them, we should really check right out in front of Mallard Lane on South Bolton Road, because when you look at mass general laws, it talks about speed and it talks about thickly settled, and it gives you the distance. And if you go on Mass GIS, Oliver, or now it's Mass Mapper, you can run the distances out and you can see it's thickly settled. So I think somebody's, I don't know, maybe misunderstanding the police chief when they asked specifically on the road speed when it's not posted.
Okay.
So
So we had
very
originally,
important. What's that?
We had originally made the comment that it needed to be 200 feet for a road posted at 30 miles per hour. So
Right.
I never did see something to confirm that the 200 feet was acceptable. I just then heard that the police noted it was 40 miles an hour, which would mean it was even longer.
Right. I think it's some space on South Bolton Road, and there's a lot of residents here that travel South Bolton Road. I'm one of them. And if you go out underneath 495, it's not quite a double marked lane, center lane, but the speed there is no doubt 40. It's a straightaway. But when you get into some of the other parts, like down by the Apple Orchard where South Bolton Road comes off Water Hill, that's a little slower in there. You can see it. And then when you jump out underneath 495, it definitely goes to 40. But when you come back through South Bolton Road, it's basically right after Mallard Lane. It's a village. I mean, you can see the size of the homes. It's a village. That's the whole idea of what we're trying to build. It's a very village field, and there's no way the speed's 40 when you read Mass General laws.
I do just have to jump in and just note that I spoke with the police chief, and I'm reporting what the police chief said, and that is,
Yep.
you know, what the ZBA will have to consider. The town of
Right, I
Bolton
think-
has not designated sections of streets as thickly settled as of yet, though through Mass General law, that is an option, though that section of road is not designated thickly settled.
Well, Valerie, I don't, no disrespect, but I don't think they're gonna go against Mass General law. I don't think they can.
Well,
Right, so the police chief statement would stand.
if I might just point out here, the actual methodology in determining the required site distance has nothing to do with speed limit. It has to do with the speeds that people are actually driving on the road. And in actuality, what the traffic engineers use is what's known as the 85th percentile speed, which is the speed at which 85% of the people are going slower than. So it's the fastest 15%. And in most projects, there's actually, when they put the counters down and they do a full traffic study, they're also taking speed information from what's going on in the street. And then that speed is used to calculate the required site distance. So I think whatever it is, I think there has been insufficient information with regards to what the applicant's team believes the site distance is and what the site distance is required to be under Mass DOT or AASHTO guidelines. I think if you present that information, then Janet can review it, and the police chief can review it within the context of what standard procedures are.
Okay, so Andy, did you want to ask your questions, or do you want Seth first to
Yes,
respond?
please, before Seth gets into his discussion, my question relates to the the waiver request letter that was prepared. I believe that most of our zoning board of appeals members are very familiar with the proximity of both wells and structures to wetland resources areas and to property lines. But what draws my attention is the near the bottom of the letter, there's a waiver to allow a well for unit 1 to be 24 feet from a sewer force main. And that's not something that I'm very familiar with, the ramifications of that specific waiver. Again, we're usually dealing with property lines and wetlands resource areas, not proximity to sewers. So if maybe Seth can comment on it, and maybe possibly Janet can maybe follow up and provide her input on it, it'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. So Seth, do you want to jump in?
I do. Sorry about the pause there.
It's okay.
For the record, Mr. Chairman, my name is Seth Donahoe. I'm with Dillis and Roy Civil Design Group. We've been assisting with the preparation of the comprehensive permit plans for Mr. Morin. I'll just briefly address some of the items that came up in that discussion. And I do realize that Horsley and Witten did not receive this until Friday-ish, so they may not have had a chance to digest everything yet. We did reply to everything in their peer review letter, and I believe it's complete from a technical standpoint at this point. There's a couple things that came up in questions here. As Jim mentioned, we will be completing the additional soil testing this week on Friday. So we will be doing that testing in areas that had been tested before, as well as additional areas to confirm that everything that proposed is suitable. There was a question related to the wastewater sizing that is now on sheet C 5.1, which is one of our utility detail sheets. And we have shown the complete sizing of the proposed subsurface sewage disposal system. And in past discussions with the board, it was my understanding that there was a concern of the sizing for the proposed affordable units. Typically, age-restricted development is scheduled at 150 gallons per day per unit. And we have increased the sizing for the affordable units to be consistent with every other town house in Bolton, which uses 110 gallons per day per bedroom. So that provision is provided now. So if the those particular units were not to be age restricted, there'd be no issues with the sewage flows related to that. The O&M plan was resubmitted. There's actually a simplified sketch of all the areas that will be subject to operation maintenance going forward with the homeowners association. So hopefully the board and the peer reviewer have a chance to review that. The intent of that is that this is a private development and the homeowners association will be maintaining everything in there. So it's an easy way for the party responsible for that to see what needs to be taken care of. I believe Jim addressed the conservation issues. His consultant will be circling back related to many of those. One thing that came up related to the wells, the Bolton Board of Health actually requires wells to only be 25 feet from wetlands or any surface water. So we have not required a waiver from that. The Conservation Commission has different setbacks. So there's a little inconsistency there. And our waiver letter does address the setbacks that we need from the conservation standpoint for that. Site distances are something that we have gone out and measured. They're depicted on the plans now. And the applicant is proposing, if the board would be agreeable, we would post a reduced speed limit on that section of road. Like Jim, I've drove on that often. I find it hard to believe that you could routinely go 40 miles per hour on it. I don't doubt that some people do that on occasion. So we'd be proposing to remedy that for both the applicant's benefit and the benefit of the surrounding houses as well. So that's in a nutshell, those are the items that seem to be outstanding. If the board needs any more detail on any of those, I'd be happy to address them, or I can wait till you have more questions related to the waivers that were presented.
How about the one question Andy had about the setback to the what was the specific language, Andy?
It was on the pressure main or something.
From the well to a sewer force main.
To a super.
Sure. So the there's only one unit in the development that has a force main now. Just due to the location of everything, we have requested a reduced setback for the force main to be located approximately 20 feet from that well. The Board of Health actually requires 50 feet for a regular development. The force main would be something that's under pressure, and the well is, in theory, probably about 300 feet deep in this area. We can certainly look at reconfiguring that to reduce or increase that setback. And I can touch back with the board on that after we have a chance to look at that.
Okay.
I'd love to hear Janet's thoughts on that as well. What should be our concerns with that specific issue?
I think, as Seth mentioned, the force main is under pressure the entire time. It's not typically, if there's a leak in a force main, you're going to know about it. That's kind of what your concern is with a gravity sewer pipe, is that there can be a crack in the pipe and it will slowly be leaking out and you won't know. For the force main, you're going to know. So there is some opportunity to take action right away if there is a problem. It is a pretty, typically a water line and a sewer line need to be 10 feet apart wherever they are, on the streets everywhere. But, you know, well is different because it has opportunity, but it is 300 feet deep. So I wouldn't be as anxious about a force main as I would be about a gravity main. But I think the farther you can get them apart, the better. Does that, maybe that's kind of, you like to get
Thank
the
you.
50 feet, but there's been other times that people have had to grant a waiver.
Okay.
Okay, so I heard Seth mention something about possibly looking at pulling it for a little further away if possible. So I guess that's something we'll look into.
One quick question, has this been run by Board of Health? Just curious if they've had any comments so far.
If I could address that for the board.
Sure.
It's typical with many of the 40Bs that we've been before you. There are waivers associated with this, and many of the things that are depicted on our plan requires this board to grant a waiver before we could actually go to the Board of Health. So our intent would be to receive those waivers, and then we would prepare a separate sewage disposal system plan that incorporates those waivers before we ran it by them.
Right. And I believe, Valerie, were you going to reach out to the boards just for any final comment on the waivers, so that if we have any real concern, or if they have any real concerns, that we should incorporate them or ask those questions now before we have to, you know, on one of our future meetings, we'll have to definitely vote on the waivers to accept them. So at least that's what we've normally done. So any feedback we'd be trying to get now or sooner than later.
That's right. Yes. So I'll receive feedback from the other town departments through this process, just, you know, without having the Board of Health go through a formal process, just have some comment from them on the waiver requests, especially as the site plans have changed so much in the last few months. So yes, I'll get those comments.
Perfect.
I was
If
also
I could
wondering
point out
whether
as well.
Andy first, then Seth.
Thank
I
you.
was wondering whether the Bolton well regulations differentiate between sewer forced mains and the gravity systems that Janet was talking about, or is it just one blanket requirement of distance?
It is actually a blanket requirement. They refer to it both as the same line item, 50 feet for both of them.
Thank you.
Okay.
And just a quick point, I wanted to clarify, while we are requesting waivers from the Bolton Board of Health regulations, everything that we're doing on the site will exceed what's required by the state environmental code, commonly referred to as Title V. So there's no exceptions to that that would be incorporated in this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. All right, so any other questions of the applicant at this time, or the regarding what was just discussed, or from Horsey Witten? Otherwise, we can probably move on to the next item. And Seth, did you speak? So, I mean, we were talking about the Horsey Witten, but you kicked off. Did you actually speak of all the revised documentation for on behalf of the applicant?
So we have submitted documents. Some of them do address some of the items that requested on behalf of the applicant. I believe Mr. Pesnola's letter summarized a couple of the outstanding items that the applicant will need to provide you at some point in the near future. But I believe at this point we've addressed all the outstanding items.
Okay. All right, so Jim, do you have any additional presentation items you want to speak about, or did Seth cover everything?
I think Seth did a wonderful job covering it. The only new information that I had that was late breaking was I finally got that test date from Bill, which is this Friday, which becomes very important for everybody's concerns. So that's what I had.
Perfect. Okay.
Can I make a comment, a question?
Certainly.
I know that frequently what happens if there is a sewer line and a water line too close to each other, the one or the other, so this in this case, it would have to be the sewer force main, is encased in concrete until it reaches that maximum, that minimum distance. Is that something that the applicant could do? Is that section of force main encased in concrete, or is that not possible?
Can I speak on that?
Certainly.
So I have a big background in this, believe it or not. I've been a public health director and I issued a lot of well permits in my day. The proper way to do it would be is, like Seth was saying, the well is probably 275 to 300 feet deep here, potentially. The best way to do it is seal it where it meets the bedrock. It's called a bentonite seal. That would protect the well at its best point, because if anything migrates towards the well, it won't come in on that seal. When you get well contamination, it usually comes through the wellhead or down at where the piping meets the bedrock. So it's getting the proper seal. It's pretty expensive, but I'd be willing to do it. It's a little different way. You got to make sure you explain that to the well driller. When I issued well permits in the past, it's a bentonite seal where the casing meets the bedrock. Make sure that's properly sealed.
So you would seal the well compared to sealing the
Yes,
force main?
because otherwise you can be guessing. And not only that is, what if some other contamination comes from somewhere else? It nips it right in the bud, the concern. And it adds more protection to the well from potentially anything else, surface runoff or anything. That's where a lot of well drillers fall short. I know they all have well drilling licenses, but whoever can seal it at the bedrock the best ends up winning and not getting a contaminated well. So that's what I would recommend. There's documentation on it. I could submit it to the board for that particular well.
Yeah, I think that'd be something that, if you can submit that and include it to Janet and
Yeah.
the team, then we can maybe get some closure on this point.
Okay.
And I can have some of the experts at Horsewitten that
Yep.
would know this better than I do.
Yep.
Look at that. That'd be
Yep.
great. Thank you.
And that would go toward Andy's concern as well, I think. So that's good. Thanks, Jim. Thanks.
Yep.
Jeff. Okay, so anyone else have questions of either the applicant's resource set Donahue or Amy and Janet? But if not, maybe we'll have Joe Pisnola speak to, so Jim and Amy, did you get a copy of the letter that the Bethany Bethune and Chris White sent?
Yes, I believe I did.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, because I know, well, they asked questions. I'm just looking at some notes I took. They had questions about the septic, the backup generator for the septic pump. They had a comment about discouraging prohibition of generators for the individual homes, given the propensity for lengthy power outages in the area. They had questions about the number of residents in the units. I think some of the things have already been discussed in some of the documentation we received. But they had a question about survey of property lines. I think there was some talk about making sure that your property versus their property, the lines, make sure they're clear so that the work wasn't going to be disturbing their property.
Yeah.
They had questions about snow storage, marking of trees greater than 10 inches diameter, and also an assurance that any abutter trees aren't going to be disturbed during the process. And they asked about a complete O&M plan, but I think we've got a revised one, and they had questions about sites. So a lot of their questions were sort of discussed a little bit by everyone tonight, but I just want to be sure that people get those, and if there's any, like, oh yeah, we need to have a comment on that, then we'll be sure that it's addressed.
Okay.
Okay. So how about Joe Pisnola? You did an update, and again with the mindset of what's really open and the time frame of when we have to close this hearing. I think maybe you'll be able to speak toward, yeah, we probably do need another maybe month extension, but to at least make sure we get the documentation and final documents and things like that. So why don't you address your concerns or your letter, and then, you know, if you can agree with that assumption that I'm making, that we do need a little more time.
Yes. I can lead with that, Mr. Chairman. I think the board needs to be prepared to have 2 more meetings. The next meeting will be to officially bring in all of the additional information, whether it be soil testing or formal response letters or what have you. You know,
Comments.
there, and then a meeting, at least one meeting to begin to review draft conditions and for the board to openly discuss the waivers themselves, to give the applicant an opportunity to understand what conditions might be coming down the pike, and to comment, have input to that. So I think the extension needs to cover us through those 2 meetings, so that can happen. As far as outstanding items, I think it's been itemized here, but I'll speak through it. There's a response to the response for Horsley Witten. So Janet says that she'll review that and go through those items. I think Amy is going to have to wait until the applicant provides the additional response to the outstanding comments on the wetlands issues from Norse Environmental, and then Amy can then respond to those items. As far as the site distance is concerned, I understand Seth's point at reduced speed. The applicant has no ability to post or reduce or do anything within the public way with regards to speeds. That's done, as Ms. Moran commented, in accordance with state law and as governed by or as administered by the police department. I still think that the applicant should present to the board what the acceptable stopping site distances are in accordance with industry standards, AASHTO, Mass DOT. The neighbors do bring up a point from which they note on the plan that looking southwest, the applicant is gaining the 220-foot site distance by looking across their property. The applicant has no control over that property, and to maintain vegetation, to preclude a parked car or what have you. So I think whatever additional information they provide with regards to the site distance issue should address that comment from the neighbor on point. If in some instances, applicants have secured what they call site distance easement or site triangle easements from neighboring properties that allows them to control vegetation, maintain vegetation, and control obstructions to preserve that site distance. Once that information is all put forth, obviously Janet can take a look at it, but also the police chief can take a look at it and comment on the safety aspects of it. There are things that the applicant could do in concert with, working with the police department to help slow traffic. In some instances when speed and insufficient site distance have been an issue, applicants have volunteered monies to put in rapid repeating flashing signs that will take the speed of a vehicle coming and blink when they're going faster than that speed, and it's a speed calming method that could be implemented. There are a host of other things that can be done, but again, it has to be done in cooperation and in concert with the police department for implementation. So one of the other issues is the architectural plans. There is a requirement that plans prepared by an architect are submitted for review. The proposal is down to 2 types of buildings. I think it's 50 by 60 and 40 by 65. There's two size buildings. Some preliminary architectural renderings and undimensioned floor plans that didn't appear to be done by an architect had been submitted, that show undulations and porches and more detail than the boxes that are presented on the site plan. I do think, and I brought this up several times, that the plan needs to be representative of what's being built. There is a requirement within the regulations that plans prepared by an architect are submitted, but also there's a general premise in the statute that all the units are indistinguishable from each other. So the board needs to understand what are these units going to look like? How are they going to fit on the lots and so forth with regards to setbacks? Porches are included in those setbacks and so forth. So I think what they're doing is taking a simplistic overall building envelope and setting it on the plan, but I think they're doing themselves a disservice if that's the case. Because in some cases, the garage is only 20 feet from the travel lane, and there's a sidewalk in there. And we need to understand, is 20 feet minus the sidewalk still enough to get a parked car in there and not block the sidewalks? So I think that a little bit more detail with regards to that. Get the architectural plans for the 2 unit styles, and then update the site plan with all of the appurtenances that the architectural plans are going to have. If the garages are set back, if there's a porch, if there's a deck, whatever. So that's there. And then lastly, I think Valerie mentioned the getting the department input with regards to Board of Health, police, fire. Just the plans have changed. So I think another round of comments need to come in from departments on the new plan. They've presented a swept path analysis for the fire truck, but there are 3 units at the end that come off of the cul-de-sac and are on a shared driveway. So it's something that we should have the fire chief look at, and make sure that they've seen it, and that we have something for the record that says that the departments have seen the new plan and they have no further comment. At least give them that opportunity. So I believe that's all I had, Mr. Chairman. I do think that we're getting close, and that we can start to talk about the next steps, which is draft decision and formulation of conditions, and for the board to review within a public hearing the waiver requests.
Right. I believe the waiver request and the conditions item would be take precedent before we can then incorporate into like a draft decision. So yeah,
right,
those are necessary. And these inputs that we spoke about tonight, or required inputs, are certainly key on when we think we can get those, so that we can sort of project whether it's a month from May 5th, or whether it's a month and a half, to give us time, because we are actively working a separate 40B on a much larger scope that we're fitting into our schedule as well. So, we have to be cognizant of the boards and all our resources availability, because everyone else has, like you have other assignments, closely with his other clients. So, we have to sort of build in a little ramp for us so that we're not trying to do too much too fast. I'm not trying to delay any of the process, but we have to be cognizant of a reasonable work product for everyone too.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned or the extension is to May 5th. I apologize. I wasn't able to put my hands on the physical extension letter that had a date certain. But I'm projecting that at least a May meeting and a June meeting. So the extension should go out beyond that.
Yeah, okay. So Andy, I think just ping me. Someone had a question. Who has a question? Oh, is it Barry?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Identify yourself, name and address, Barry, and then
Yes.
go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Barry Bushinsky. I'm a direct abutter. I live with my wife at 348 South Bolton Road. And thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
You're welcome.
I'm addressing this to the board as well as to Mr. Peznola. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I'm happy to hear, and I congratulate Mr. Peznola on what he just described. I think for over a year now, we've been discussing site issues in nausea, and I think site issues are very important. But the fact is that the application is not complete. I've been involved in 40B applications, and the requirement is, as Mr. Peznola has described, is that you need architectural floor plans and elevations of what is going to be actually constructed. And actually, I think they have to be stamped by a registered architect. We've been talking about so much about site issues that we have neglected to continue with what the architectural design is. And I don't think that we have architectural plans showing what's actually going to be built. Sure, we have information on what's going to be built underground, but we don't have the footprints of what the buildings are going to be and elevations. And I think that the board, in due respect, you don't have enough information to make even a draft, conditions on this until we get additional information. So I thank I thank Joe for bringing this up again. He's brought it up several times in the past. And I look forward to bringing up the architectural level of drawings to the site drawings and, utilities, topography, all of that. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So I guess that this aspect of the architectural plans, is also going to fall on you, Jim.
Yeah, no, and they've been ordered. And the things have changed. I bought plans from an architect, and we lost that building already. So that's part of my process, to be honest with the board, is I want to make sure before I pay again and waste money that we're really fine tuning. And the goal is, I agree with Joe, these homes will fit in those boxes. And we're going to add the detail, but I can't just be paying for things and then, the board asked me, like they did, is to think about reducing the amount of units and open space. I don't have a crystal ball to look into the future. So I'm comfortable. I'm at a point already 2 weeks ago that I ordered the plans. I might even shop for a local architect because the architect I'm using was online referral, and they're down in Texas, which I don't have any pull. I'd rather be able to drive to some office building and say, hey, where's my stuff? Because they tell me I should have them in a couple of weeks, but that's no guarantee. And I can fly to Texas, but I'm not going for architectural plans for 2 homes. So I'm working on it, and I understand everybody's concerns, and I don't disagree with their concerns. I'm trying to do it from a business perspective and say, I got to decide what I have. And finally, I think I'm there. And,
I think-
you know, I've already ordered them, so I will double check with them and we should have something in a couple of weeks.
Okay, good. So that's encouraging because as I say, the longer any major open item exists, the longer we're going to have to ask for an extension from you. You know,
Right.
and I know you want to move along. We do too, but we
Right.
we have to do our town due diligence.
I understand that. I
Yep,
do.
I do. It's for the benefit of other people listening in that, you know,
Okay.
I'm sure that we are from the board, we won't try to rush to get to a decision until we know I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and we have the, you know, application complete. And that's why we have Joe as our peer reviewer to the board to say, yep, this is now, you know, the substance is there. You know, acknowledging that, yeah, it's a 40B, so you don't need finals of a lot of things, but we do need the, you know, the minimum requirements. And so we're going to have to hold to that before we can
Yep.
get to the point to close the hearing.
Yep.
So, okay.
I think it's also important to note that when those plans are submitted, you should at the same time be able to designate the affordable units, which ones
Yes.
are affordable, where they're located.
Yes, I agree. And what we talked about is we want to make sure that the standalone unit down at the front is not 40B, that we talked about that the last meeting, that they'll sit around the cul-de-sac.
Right. Okay, perfect. That'd be great. All right. So I also want to give Bethany, Brittany, I see she's on the line. I didn't want to give your letter that you and Chris put together a short shrift. So if you have any other comments about that letter, you know, certainly feel free to speak to it. Otherwise, if you think we covered it, then that's fine too.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is Chris Hoyt and Brittany Bethune at 342 South Bolton. I appreciate you, going through the letter. I think many of the items have been addressed, and obviously we've talked a lot about the site distance and also obviously the architectural plans. I know one item which I did see on one of the recent plans that just came out last Friday there, the first, that had the trees identified, but they were all in the town right away. I just didn't know how the level of detail, which trees will be identified, because they were all right along there. And then basically what will be in the current, obviously existing versus the future, because I know it was on a existing plan. So which also obviously is something Horsley Witten has addressed. So I don't want to belabor any of that. One thing that I more just via discussion that we've just been having right now, and I think the architectural plans will play into it when it comes, is I saw the sewage calculations talks about the 2 affordable units that'll be, and that's based on 2-bedroom units. So obviously we just don't know where those are going to be. And I just want to make sure that they ultimately are actually 2 bedrooms, because that's obviously what the sewage calculations are based off of. So obviously there's things in play still. So go ahead.
Just looking through to make sure we don't have any other comments right now.
I think many of the other items have been touched on.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Yeah.
I know one of them, sorry, the snow storage.
Yeah, the snow storage. I
Oh, yeah.
mean, you did note that the fire department can fully turn around the cul-de-sac without having to go over it. I know originally they had said, don't put any plantings there because they need to be able to drive over it, but it looks like that's not going to be a problem. If a big snow ice pile is on top of that, they won't need to try to get through it in case there's a fire. So I think that's been addressed. And yeah, what Chris was saying, along the roadway, all the trees have been noted, but no other trees along the property have been noted, and what's staying, what's not. I know that there are some big squiggly lines of where trees are. So we're not sure what's staying, what's going. And just obviously, like, personally knowing what trees along our property line.
We just have, we have
sure.
less than most in the
We have
neighborhood.
very few trees, so. And then I think that might be it. And so I guess just the clarification that is the force main, the pump, like I just know that like the unit 1 has the force main, and then if there is failure, it's obviously right there next to the wetland. So just like clarification on like what that protocol is. And I do see the O&M, but I guess I don't know if it's complete because a lot of stuff just says to be determined. I know that's going to come when we know who the unit owners are and such like that, but just want to make sure that everything in regards to that is addressed
Right.
in the O&M.
Which Liz brought up also the date as well. So
yeah, so it may be addressed in next iteration, but just want to make sure that it gets covered.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Well, certainly if you come up with any follow-up, certainly document to Valerie, and we'll be sure to incorporate them into the record. So,
thank you, Chair.
Yep.
It's
Okay.
Gavin Robinson at 328 South Fulton Road.
Where's that? Where's that?
It's Gavin
Oh,
Robinson
okay.
at 328 South Fulton Road. And sorry, it may have already been discussed, but I saw in the plans the snow piles, they're basically put past the sidewalks. So I thought that was kind of a strange setup where a plow can't actually, push snow over a sidewalk. So that just seems strange in the plan. So I think we need to take a look at where the snow is actually being placed.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else? Because otherwise we can maybe propose a time suitable for the next hearing, and then also get Jim's buy-in to at least an extension. It looks like, I don't know if you want to go month-to-month extension so that we know when we have documents and when we can schedule the next hearing.
Right. I would prefer to go month to month.
There's no problem with that, Joe. I don't think there would be, but. Was that a no, Joe?
For clarification, when does this extension expire?
So Valerie, I think you had the letter, was it May 5th?
That's right. Yep, that's the current deadline.
So our current deadline from the last time it was extended was, to May 5th. So given today's the 6th of April, and we've got a couple weeks before documents will, percolate in, we need then time for review, re-documenting, analysis of, what people have received, and then we can have a hearing. So we're looking probably early May for the next hearing, but that certainly won't get us to the point where we have either board comments or a meeting on the waivers and things like that.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I would like to go month to month if it's okay. I think if we do something in early May, we're covered to that. And then, as we're getting documents, I could always submit another letter for the following month's extension.
Okay.
Because it's pretty easy. I just send it into Valerie, Valerie will remind me if it's needed. So, and then I get it right out to her. So it hasn't been a problem in the past.
No, I don't perceive, Joe, and that's fine protocol.
That's fine, Mr. Chairman. I mean, what we're dealing with here is if the board failed to close the hearing within the 180 days, it is not a constructive grant.
Right.
So there's no fear there. It is essentially a constructive denial or a denial, and the applicant would have to seek an appeal from that to HAC. So I'm not too worried about it. As long as the board is covered and has that extension prior to, well in advance of the next meeting, it should be good.
Okay. So you'll turn that around in the next day or so, Jim, granting it the next meeting.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So Valerie, you have a calendar we can look at for maybe early May, and balancing what your schedule is too. I mean,
Yeah, I would, so I've heard from the applicant that it may be a few weeks until we get some more information. So if we have one early May, the first Monday in May, the second is town meeting. But the Tuesday the 3rd, Wednesday the 4th, or Thursday the 5th.
So what was Brian's, he said a Wednesday was not preferable to him at currently?
That's correct, yes. So he was after a Monday or Tuesday meeting.
So would either he would prefer Monday or Tuesday, was a Thursday okay?
Let me look for his email. I'm forgetting the days he said.
Tuesday, the 3rd would be good for me.
What was that? Tuesday, the 3rd?
Yes.
Okay.
I can do that Tuesday as long as it's a little bit later. So I can't do 6, but I could do 6:30 or 7 would be best. Or the 5th, I'm totally open for.
Town meeting is the 2nd. Is that what if it
That is
goes
correct.
over, if it goes over to the 3rd, we have a problem. So
Oh, right. Yeah, sometimes there. So I was thinking maybe that Thursday may work, the 5th, but I don't know. If Valerie, do you have meetings on Thursdays, or what is with your other capacities?
Sometimes I think that Friday, the 5th is okay. I will note that Brian mentioned that Mondays and Tuesdays are better for him.
Right.
And I don't think that Thursday works for me.
Okay. So what happens if the town meeting does overlap into a second day? Can we wouldn't be able to hold our hearing?
Right. Yes, I would. I mean, I believe the preference by the town is to not have any additional meetings on town meeting nights. And I also would not be available. I would have to be there. So perhaps the week after.
So how about the Tuesday, the 10th?
I'd prefer Monday the 9th.
Monday the 9th, or that's fine. I mean, right, if it's not that week.
Monday the 9th is fine with me.
Okay.
That works for me too.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. And would 6 or 6:30, does it matter for your schedule?
Monday doesn't matter. I can do anything on Monday.
So 6 o'clock time. That way we can hopefully, get it between 6 to 8 or 6 to 7 or whatever, people are burning the candle. So Jim, does that work for you and Joe?
Yeah, it works for me.
Okay. So why don't we have a motion to continue to Monday, May 9th at 6 p.m.
No motion.
Okay. You got a second? All right.
I second it.
All right, perfect. Thanks.
And those in favor, Gerard Ahern,
Yes.
Brad Reed,
Yes.
Andy Kishitz,
Yes.
Elizabeth Hutchins,
Yes.
and Gabriella Amano.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so we'll continue.
So in the interim period, there will be an extension?
Yes, we'll get a letter from Jim Moran to confirm, extension till that May 9th letter, May 9th date, and then, does it have to be the 10th so that we're covered by the 9th, or is it?
Yeah, no, I'll stretch it out so we're
Okay.
covered.
All right, perfect. In case something were to come up and we had to change the date for a day or something.
Right. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, it may be preferable to have it go out a month from May 5th. So if it's to June 5th.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. All right, well, that sounds good. Thanks for everyone's participation, and I guess we'll just wait till June to see everyone back.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
Right.
thanks.
Good night.
Valerie, do we have any admin for tonight, or no minutes? Or are we in good shape?
Nope, no minutes.
Oh, you're so lucky. All right, so I guess we just need a motion to adjourn then.
I make a motion that we adjourn till the 9th of May at 6 p.m.
Perfect.
Second.
And Brad Reed,
Yes.
Andy Kishitz,
Yes.
Gerard Ahern,
Yes.
Elizabeth Hutchins,
Yes.
and Gabriella Amano.
Yes.
All right, perfect.
All right.
Well, thanks, folks, for the participation. Appreciate it.
Right.
Everyone have a
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks, Janet.
Easter holiday.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye.
Bye-bye.